I've spent my entire life studying risk, not academic risk, real risk. The kind that wipes out portfolios, destroys companies, and humbles people who thought they were smarter than the market. I've lived through crashes, bubbles, panics, and recoveries, and after decades of watching how money and human behavior interact, I can tell you this with absolute certainty. The biggest financial mistake people make is not what most think it is. It's not young people spending too much. It's not investors chasing hot stocks. It's not even market crashes. The most tragic financial mistake happens quietly, late in life, when no one is warning you anymore. It's when people reach retirement, win the game, and then refuse to enjoy the victory. I've watched hardworking people grind for 40, sometimes 50 years. They save, they sacrifice, they delay gratification. They do exactly what society tells them is responsible, and they retire with enough money to live comfortably, sometimes more than enough. And then something strange happens. Instead of easing up, they tighten their grip, they stop spending, they deny themselves comfort, they delay experiences. They behave like they're still one paycheck away from disaster, even when the math clearly says otherwise. From the outside, it looks like discipline. From the inside, it's fear. And fear, especially late in life, is incredibly expensive. Let me be blunt, because that's how markets work. When you're young, saving money is rational, it's powerful, it's necessary. Every dollar saved early has time on its side. Time multiplies money. That's how wealth is built. I built my career understanding that patience and compounding create enormous advantages. But here's the part people never internalize. After 65, you are no longer in the accumulation phase. You are in the conversion phase. You are no longer planting seeds. You are harvesting. And when people keep behaving like they're still planting, they miss the entire point of the journey. I once knew a retired factory supervisor. Solid guy. Disciplined, smart. He retired with enough money to travel, enjoy good food, live without stress. But after retirement, he became even more frugal than before. Cheapest groceries, worn out furniture, no travel, no indulgence, no joy. When I asked him why, he said something that stuck with me. I need to be responsible. Responsible for what? He already won. He died in his early 80s with almost every dollar untouched. His kids inherited it and spent more in months than he spent in years. They traveled. They upgraded their lives. They enjoyed what he never allowed himself to enjoy. That's not responsibility. That's tragedy. Here's the core misunderstanding. There are two types of saving, and most people never learn the difference. The first type is purpose-driven saving. This is intelligent, strategic, necessary. You save for a house. You save for your children's education. You save for retirement. This kind of saving has a finish line. The second type is fear-driven saving. This has no finish line, no target, no clear reason. It's just anxiety pretending to be prudence. And here's the hard truth. If you are past 65 and still saving without a clear, rational purpose, you are no longer being careful. You are being controlled by fear. Fear of running out, fear of uncertainty, fear of what if. But let me ask you something directly, the same question I ask retirees all the time. What exactly are you saving for? Most can't answer. They say things like, just in case, or to be safe. Safe from what? You already survived the hardest parts. You lived through recessions, market crashes, career instability, inflation, wars, pandemics. You navigated decades of uncertainty and came out the other side with resources. The game is over. You won. And yet you're still playing defense. In markets, we call that a failure to adjust strategy when conditions change. And it's one of the fastest ways to lose value. After retirement, the biggest risk is no longer market volatility. The biggest risk is wasting the years when money can still meaningfully improve your life. You don't get bonus years for being conservative. You don't get refunded time for dying with a bigger balance. The cruel reality is this: the older you get, the less useful money becomes, even as people cling to it more tightly. And that mismatch between what money can do and how people use it is the most expensive mistake of all. I've spent my life thinking in probabilities. In markets, you don't ask what could happen. You ask what is most likely to happen, and you position yourself accordingly. That mindset is what made me money. And it's the same mindset most retirees completely abandon the moment they stop working. They keep planning their financial lives as if time is unlimited. It isn't. When you're young, money is scarce and time is abundant. That's why saving aggressively makes sense. Time is the multiplier. Time is the engine. A dollar at 25 has decades to work, to compound, to recover from mistakes. You can afford patience, you can afford delay, But after 65, the equation flips. Time becomes scarce. Money, if you've done things right, is no longer the constraint. And yet, people keep acting as if the old equation still applies. This is where the biggest mispricing happens. Let's talk math, not emotion. $1 saved at 30 might turn into 10 or 20 by retirement. That's real leverage. But $1 saved at 70 doesn't have that runway. It doesn't compound meaningfully. It just sits there. Meanwhile, every single day of your life is being consumed whether you use it well or not. So here's the reality most people refuse to face after 65. Money has diminishing returns, but time has accelerating costs. Every year you delay using your money wisely, the value you could have extracted from it disappears forever. Think about what money can buy you at different ages. At 65 or 70, money can buy freedom of movement, travel that doesn't exhaust you, experiences that stimulate your mind, activities that still feel accessible, shared moments with people you care about while your health allows it. At 80, that menu shrinks. At 85, it shrinks dramatically. At 90, money mostly buys care, comfort, and maintenance. Important things, yes, but very limited compared to what was possible earlier. And yet, this is when people tighten their grip the most. I've seen retirees with substantial savings delay travel year after year. Next year, they say, when things feel a little safer. That logic sounds responsible, but it ignores probability. The probability that your health declines is far higher than the probability that you'll suddenly need every dollar you saved. Markets taught me this lesson early. You don't wait for perfect certainty. Perfect certainty never comes. You act when the odds are in your favor. Your early retirement years, roughly 65 to 75, are when the odds are highest that money will meaningfully improve your quality of life. That's your high return window. Miss it, and no amount of money later will recreate it. I remember a former colleague who had always dreamed of going to Alaska. He talked about it for years. He had the money, but he kept delaying. One more year of saving, one more year to be safe. When he finally booked the trip at 79, he had a stroke 2 weeks before departure. He never went. The money stayed in the account. Fear didn't protect him. Fear just postponed living until living wasn't possible. This is what people don't understand. Saving money does not freeze time. It only freezes life. And here's the cruel irony. People treat money like it's fragile and time like it's durable. In reality, it's the opposite. Money is renewable. Markets recover. Expenses fluctuate. But time only moves in one direction, and it never negotiates. I've been fortunate to live longer than many people I've known. And I can tell you from experience, the gap between what you want to do and what you can do widens faster than anyone expects. At 70, a long walk through a foreign city feels invigorating. At 80, it feels exhausting. At 90, it's not even an option. That's not pessimism. That's biology. And biology doesn't care about your bank balance. So let's talk about the most dangerous illusion in retirement, the illusion of infinite tomorrows. When you're young, tomorrow feels guaranteed. That mindset makes sense because statistically, you have many years ahead. But after 65, clinging to that mindset becomes irrational. If you're 65, you might have 15 or 20 good years. If you're 75, maybe 10. If you're 85, you're counting in single digits. This isn't morbid, this is reality. And reality is the foundation of good decisions. Yet I see people in their 70s making financial plans as if they're going to live forever. They optimize for scenarios that are mathematically unlikely and sacrifice experiences that are available right now. In investing, that's called over-hedging. And over-hedging is expensive. Fear magnifies worst-case scenarios and makes them feel inevitable. It convinces you to act as if living to 100 is guaranteed and that disaster is always around the corner. But rational decision-making doesn't work that way. You plan for what is probable, not for what is theoretically possible. Is it possible you live to 100? Yes. Is it probable? No. Is it possible medical costs rise? Yes. Is it probable they will wipe out someone who planned responsibly? Unlikely. But you know what is guaranteed? Every year you delay enjoying your money is gone forever. That's the trade-off people never calculate. I've evaluated thousands of investments, and the biggest mistake isn't losing money, it's missing opportunity because you were too afraid to act. Retirement works the same way. Money is supposed to buy options. Flexibility, experiences, reduce stress. But options expire, and in life, they expire faster than in markets. So here's the uncomfortable conclusion after 65. Hoarding money often increases risk instead of reducing it. The risk of regret, the risk of wasted health, the risk of looking back and realizing you optimized for safety instead of living. You can't compound time, you can't defer life, and you don't get rewarded for dying with unused capital. The smart move, the rational move, is to deploy money when it has the highest impact on your remaining years. That's not reckless. That's intelligent capital allocation. I'm David Tepper. And if there's one thing I've learned after decades in markets, it's this: most people misunderstand risk. They obsess over the wrong dangers and completely ignore the real ones. And nowhere is that mistake more expensive than after age 65. Wall Street teaches you how to maximize returns. Financial media talks endlessly about beating the market, timing cycles, and protecting capital. But what nobody teaches you is how the math of life changes as you age. The equation you used for 40 years stops working, and if you don't update it, you'll quietly lose the most valuable asset you still have left: time. When you're young, time is abundant and money is scarce. When you're old, money is often abundant and time is brutally scarce, yet people keep behaving as if nothing has changed. Let me put this in numbers, because numbers don't lie. At 30 years old, $1 invested can compound for 30 or 40 years. That dollar is powerful. It can turn in 10, 20, sometimes $50 in that phase of life. Saving aggressively is logical. Every dollar you don't spend has a massive upside. The opportunity cost of spending is huge. But at 70, that same dollar doesn't have decades. It has maybe 10 years, maybe less. The compounding curve flattens. The upside collapses. The math changes completely. Here's the uncomfortable truth after 65. Saving another dollar usually produces less benefit than spending it wisely. And most people never run that calculation. I've met retirees with $500 and $1 Bell million, even $3 million saved, who live like they're one bad grocery bill away from disaster. They still optimize every expense as if they're 35 and building capital. They still delay joy as if tomorrow is guaranteed. That's not prudence. That's outdated thinking. Let me be blunt. $1 saved at 70 has a low financial return, but $1 not spent at 70 has a massive life cost. Every year, your ability to convert money into happiness, comfort, and meaningful experience declines. That's not philosophy. That's biology. At 68, you might still travel comfortably, walk cities, explore new places, take long flights, stay curious, stay active. At 75, those same activities become harder. At 85, many of them are gone entirely. So ask yourself this: why are you saving money for a version of yourself that can't use it? I've watched people delay their best years waiting for a future that never arrives. They say, next year. Then next year comes and something changes. Health declines, energy drops, a spouse gets sick, a knee gives out, and suddenly the window closes. The cruel part is this: the money is still there, but the life you planned to spend it on is gone. That's the real risk nobody talks about. People worry endlessly about living too long and running out of money, but far more people live too cautiously and run out of life. From a risk management perspective, this is backwards. Markets taught me to assess probabilities, not just worst-case scenarios. Fear focuses on extremes and ignores likelihood. Yes, you could live to 100. Yes, medical expenses could be high. But statistically, most people won't experience catastrophic financial ruin after 65 if they've already saved responsibly. What is guaranteed is that every year you don't use your money well is a year permanently lost. And unlike money, time doesn't compound. Another mistake I see constantly is treating all retirement years as equal. They're not. Not even close. Your money has the highest return on life satisfaction between roughly ages 65 and 75. That's when you still have health, mobility, curiosity, and freedom. That's when spending produces the biggest emotional and experiential payoff. After 75, spending naturally declines, not because you planned it, but because your life narrows. After 85, spending is mostly about care, comfort, and stability. Yet people invert this curve. They underspend when returns are highest and overprotect money when it's least useful. That's terrible capital allocation. If I ran a fund like that, investors would fire me. Let's talk about another hidden cost: physical discomfort. I've seen people with millions refuse to buy a better mattress, better shoes, better chairs, or better health care because they're being careful. Meanwhile, they wake up in pain every day, move less, feel worse, and slowly shrink their world. That's not saving money, that's spending health. Money after 65 should reduce friction in your life. Friction in your body, friction in your routines, friction in your daily energy. Hire help, pay for convenience, upgrade comfort. Preserve mobility. These are not luxuries. They're investments with immediate returns. Every dollar that reduces daily strain increases your usable time, and time is the asset you're actually managing now. Another myth people cling to is the idea of later. Later I'll travel, later I'll upgrade, later I'll enjoy it. Later is not a strategy, later is denial. I've seen enough cycles to know that conditions are never perfect. Markets are never calm. Life is never fully predictable. Waiting for certainty is just another form of fear. And fear is the worst portfolio manager there is. Fear convinces you to hoard resources long after hoarding stops being rational. It whispers worst case scenarios until you freeze. It tells you that restraint equals virtue, even when restraint is destroying your quality of life. Here's a truth most people never accept. Dying with a large unused balance is not success. It's inefficiency. Money is not a scorecard. It's a tool. And unused tools are wasted tools. I'm not telling you to be reckless. I'm telling you to be intentional. Calculate what you reasonably need. Stress test it realistically. Then stop optimizing for a future that may never exist. Start optimizing for the life you still have. From an investment standpoint, this is simple. Allocate capital where it has the highest return. In your 30s and 40s, that's financial assets. In your late 60s and 70s, that's experiences, health, comfort, and relationships. If you don't rebalance your life portfolio, you're misallocating capital. And the market doesn't forgive bad allocation. Not in stocks and not in life. I've spent my career moving capital where it works best. The same logic applies here. After 65, money works best when it's actively improving your days, not sitting idle in an account. Because at the end of the equation, there's no rollover. Time expires, always. And the biggest mistake you can make isn't losing money late in life. It's realizing too late that you were rich in dollars and poor in days. I want to talk about something far more dangerous than bad markets, inflation, or medical bills. It's something almost invisible, yet incredibly powerful. It's the thing that quietly ruins more retirements than any financial crisis ever could. Habit. Habits are incredibly useful when you're building wealth. In fact, most people who succeed financially do so because of habits: saving every month, living below their means, saying no when others say yes, delaying gratification, repetition, discipline. Those habits work. They build capital. They protect you when life gets unpredictable. But here's the problem nobody warns you about. Habits don't know when to stop. They keep running long after the environment has changed, and when you fail to update them, they turn from tools into traps. I've met countless retirees who are financially secure by any rational measure, yet still behave as if they're in survival mode. They still save automatically, still cut every corner, still deny themselves comfort, not because they've thought it through, but because that's what they've always done. When I ask them why, the answer is almost always the same. It's just how I am. It feels wrong to spend. I've always been careful. That's not reasoning. That's conditioning. In markets, we call this model failure, using an old model in a new environment. And model failure is deadly. The saving habits that protected you at 35 are not the habits that will serve you at 70. But people cling to them anyway because breaking a habit feels dangerous, even when keeping it is irrational. Here's the hard truth after 65. Saving by default is not discipline. It's laziness of thought. You're outsourcing decision-making to autopilot at the exact stage of life where intentional choices matter most. I once met a retired executive who was still saving a fixed percentage of his pension and Social Security every month. No plan, no target, just habit. When I asked him what he was saving for, he didn't have an answer. He looked genuinely confused by the question. The habit had become the goal. That's not financial intelligence. That's inertia. After retirement, the entire purpose of money changes. You are no longer optimizing for growth. You are optimizing for quality of life. And that requires a completely different mindset. Let me say something uncomfortable. If you are past 65 and still saving automatically without a clear purpose, you are not being responsible. You are avoiding responsibility. Responsibility after retirement means asking hard questions. What actually improves my daily life? What reduces stress right now? What preserves my energy and health? What experiences still matter to me? Those questions require conscious thought. Habits don't answer them. Habits just repeat. And fear loves habits because habits prevent you from confronting reality. Fear after 65 is subtle. It doesn't scream. It whispers. What if something goes wrong? What if I live too long? What if I need this later? A fear disguises itself as prudence, and most people never challenge it. But fear is a terrible decision maker. In markets, fear makes people sell at the bottom and miss the recovery. In retirement, fear makes people hoard money while life passes them by. Here's the irony: the things people fear most, running out of money, become independent, losing control, are often made more likely by refusing to spend wisely. Refusing to invest in health leads to decline. Refusing to invest in comfort leads to exhaustion. Refusing to invest in help leads to burnout and injury. I've seen people with significant wealth refuse to hire assistants, struggle with basic tasks, fall, and lose independence, all to save money they never ended up enjoying anyway. That's not caution, that's self-sabotage. Money after 65 should be used to reduce friction in your life. Friction drains energy, and energy is your most precious remaining resource. Spend on the things that preserve it. Better healthcare, better nutrition, better mobility, better living conditions, help with tasks that drain you. These are not indulgences, they are high return investments. Another trap people fall into is moralizing spending. They judge themselves for wanting comfort or pleasure as if enjoyment is irresponsible. That mindset might make sense when you're building wealth, but it's toxic when you're supposed to be using it. You don't get extra credit for suffering. The market doesn't reward unused capital. Life doesn't either. I want to talk about legacy because it's another excuse fear hides behind. Many retirees tell themselves they're sacrificing for their children, that they're living smaller so their kids can inherit more. It sounds noble. It sounds selfless. But in practice, it's often misguided. Your children do not need you to live poorly. They need you to model wisdom. They need to see that money has a purpose, that the goal of working and saving for decades is not to die with a large account balance, but to eventually convert that effort into a well-lived life. I've seen this pattern over and over. Parents deny themselves everything, pass on a large inheritance, and then the children spend it freely, often on the very things the parents refuse to enjoy. The money gets spent anyway, just by someone else. Ask yourself honestly, would you rather see your money improve your own remaining years or be used later by people who already have their own lives? Leaving something behind is fine, but sacrificing your present for a slightly larger number later is not wisdom. It's fear dressed up as virtue. There's also a deeper psychological cost to hoarding money late in life. It shrinks your world. When you don't spend, you stop engaging, you stop exploring, you stop expanding your experiences. Your life becomes smaller, quieter, more constrained, not because it has to, but because you made it that way. That's not aging, that's withdrawal. I've watched people with ample resources live like prisoners of their own habits, counting pennies while counting down years. That's one of the saddest things I know. Here's the reality: markets taught me again and again strategy must change when conditions change. What worked in one phase can destroy you in another. After 65, the discipline you need is not restraint, it's intention. You must consciously decide how money serves your life now, not later. Now, because habits don't age well. Fear doesn't age well, and time doesn't wait for either. If you don't break the habit of saving without purpose, you will look back and realize you optimized for safety instead of meaning, and no portfolio return can fix that. I've spent my career watching how people behave when the pressure is highest. In markets, extreme moments reveal the truth. Fear exposes weakness. Discipline reveals itself when it's hardest to maintain. And over decades, I've learned this lesson again and again. The biggest losses don't come from bad information. They come from failing to adapt. Retirement is no different. Most people reach the end of their working lives using the same financial mindset that helped them survive the beginning. That sounds sensible, but it's exactly the problem. The strategy that gets you to the summit is rarely the strategy that helps you enjoy the view. After 65, the goal is no longer accumulation. The goal is allocation. You are allocating remaining time, energy, and money. And of those three, money is the least fragile. Time does not compound. Health does not rebound easily. Opportunities do not wait. Money, on the other hand, is flexible, replaceable, useful only when it's deployed. I want to be very clear about something most people never hear. After 65, your most important financial skill is not saving, it's spending well. Spending with intention, spending with clarity, spending without fear. This is not about luxury or excess, it's about function. Every dollar should have a job. That job is to improve the quality of your remaining years, reduce stress, increase comfort, preserve dignity, create meaning. Anything else is misallocation. I've seen people with enormous portfolios who live in quiet misery because they refuse to spend on the things that would make their daily lives easier. Better healthcare, better food, help around the house, transportation that preserves independence, social experiences that keep them connected, They confuse frugality with virtue. But there is no virtue in unnecessary suffering. Markets don't reward unused capital. Life doesn't reward unused potential either. Let me address the biggest fear directly, the fear of running out. This fear dominates retirement decisions. It keeps people frozen. It convinces them to underspend, to delay, to deny themselves even modest improvements. But fear doesn't evaluate probability. It assumes the worst case is inevitable. That's not risk management, that's paralysis. Real risk management means planning realistically. It means accounting for probable scenarios, not hypothetical extremes. Most retirees who saved responsibly will not face financial ruin. They have Social Security, Medicare, assets, and flexibility. What they will face is declining health and narrowing options. Every year you protect money you don't need is a year you don't protect your life. I've seen people worry endlessly about living to 100 while failing to enjoy their 70s. That's not wisdom. That's fear masquerading as caution. Let me say something that might sound harsh, but it's true. Dying with a large unused balance is not success. It's inefficiency. Money is a tool. Its value lies in what it enables, not in how much remains untouched. I've structured my own thinking around this idea. Money is meant to be useful, not admired, not hoarded, not worshipped. The goal was never to die rich. The goal was to live well. People often say they want to leave a legacy. That's admirable. But legacy is not just financial. In fact, financial legacy is often the least important part. The most powerful legacy is behavior. When your children see you using money wisely, investing in health, relationships, and meaningful experiences, they learn what money is actually for. They learn that discipline has a purpose beyond accumulation. They learn that life is not something to postpone indefinitely. If you deprive yourself so your children can inherit more, you may be teaching them the wrong lesson, that money matters more than living. I've watched children inherit large sums and spend them quickly on things their parents refuse to enjoy, not because they're irresponsible, but because they understand something their parents never allowed themselves to accept. Money was meant to be used. There's another reality people avoid confronting. As you age, your ability to enjoy money declines. This isn't pessimism, it's fact. At 65, money can buy adventure, curiosity, exploration. At 75, it buys comfort and selective experiences. At 85, it mostly buys care and stability. That's why the idea of treating all retirement years the same is flawed. Your spending should be front-loaded toward the years when your body and mind can still fully participate. Waiting doesn't make spending safer, it makes it less effective. One of the saddest things I see is people reaching the end of life with regret, not because they failed financially, because they lived too cautiously. They protected resources they never truly needed while letting their best years quietly pass. Nobody at the end says, I wish I'd saved more. They say, I wish I'd traveled. I wish I'd spent more time with people I love. I wish I'd been less afraid. I wish I'd actually lived. A fear steals quietly. It doesn't announce itself. It just convinces you to wait until waiting becomes permanent. Here's my final advice, and I mean this sincerely. If you are approaching retirement or already there, stop saving by habit and start spending by reason. Ask yourself honest questions. What would make my daily life easier? What stress could I eliminate right now? What experiences do I still want while I can enjoy them? What support would preserve my independence and dignity? Then do the hardest part. Give yourself permission. You earned this money. You built it over decades. It was never meant to sit unused while you race in joy. The race has been run. The risks were taken. The work was done. Now is the time to deploy what you built, not recklessly, not emotionally, but intelligently. Because in the end, the only wealth that truly matters is the life you actually lived, not the balance you left behind. This is David Tepper, reminding you that the smartest investment after 65 isn't in markets. It's in the quality of your remaining years, and that return, unlike money, is something you can't recover if you miss it.